Welcome to another class at Educator.com in Intermediate C++. Now, we've seen functions in the introduction class. You should be familiar with functions from whatever other languages you've been taking, but we're going to get a little bit more detail into C++ specifics in the functions, a little more things about functions in general. So we're going to discuss a few more things. One of the cute things that we get from C is being able to put parameters on the main function, because of course we're going back a long time ago before we had Windows and X Windows and all these other wonderful things, GUI applications. You typed your things at the command line, and if you wanted the program to do something different, you put an argument on the command line to the program. So we're going to talk about a few things with that. With some typical types of parameters that you will give to a main function as a dash help. You tell me how to use you. And we'll deal with inline functions, which is a C++ peculiarity to functions. Recursive functions, which most languages that have functions can handle. We'll take a look at using that in C++. Something that's distinct to C and C++ is being able to pass a pointer to a function as a parameter, so that function you can have a caller call a program written by somebody else and then pass that person a pointer to your function, so that person then can call your function. It's called a callback frequently. And we'll not only to how to do that to the caller, but if like you are the caller, and where somebody is calling you and then giving you a function. Is here when you're finished, call this function. And so how do you dereference a function pointer? And finally, we'll deal with some issues with passing multi-dimensional arrays into a function, because basically, you pass a one-dimensional array. You can pass more than one, but then you have to put a hard-coded dimensions on the extra dimensions, and that can cause heartburn in a lot of applications. So there's ways of getting around those issues, which we will talk about in this class. So the parameters for main. It's our very first function. Your hello world was inside a main function. So we've always had int, which is a return value. Like every function has to have a return value. So who does it return to? It returns to the operating system that called the application. You have your main and your list of parameters, which so far we haven't given it a list of parameters. And then you have your code. And usually, not always, not every compiler will enforce this, but you should have a return that returns a value to the caller, which would be, in this particular case, would be the operating system. So the main function in C++, you would say, is overloaded. Now, you could do this in C, and they didn't call it overloading then, but now in C++, it would be something you'd call it a polymorphism. You're overloading the function call. So you've got these three different types of prototypes. You've got, or four actually, because you can have no prototypes. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways of calling the main function. With int, it's all you get is how many arguments there are. So maybe you want to do something differently because there is an argument, or do something differently because there are 2 arguments. One example, there's a program on most Unix systems called who. You type who and enter, it gives you a list of everybody who's logged into the machine right now. Now you can say, who am I? And it will just give you your login ID. Well, as it turns out, the original program, all it did was say, how many arguments are there? If I have 2 arguments, I'll just print out the one name. So you could say, who are you? And it would still print out your list of names, because all it did was count the arguments. It didn't care what the arguments were, just that there were 2 of them. But most of the time, you want to actually see what the arguments are. So you have a count of how many, and then you'll have an argument list that's passed into the main function. There's also, it's not used very often, but you can get an environment list. So you have the parameter list and an environment list. And those are external environment variables that are part of the operating system that define different things, like where to find functions, where to find libraries, what type of system you're in, whether you're in a shell, whether you're in a Bourne shell or C shell, etc. All these things would be given in a list of variables that will say like A equals some value, and then the next one will be like b equals some value, and these will all be external to the program. And you, in the operating system, you put in there a equals 7 and run your program. That'll be in your environment list, a equals 7. But the way you will see most of the time will be the second one, where you have the argument count and the argument vector. And you just have an array of character arrays. So here we're just printing them out. We're saying see out the argument list. We'll say this is my argument list. And then the integer arg-i, which is just something I put in there, between arg-i and arg-c, incrementing arg-i, of course. And we'll print out arg, and then print out arg-i. This is the 0th, the 1st, the 2nd, and then arg-vec, and then end the line. And then we'll return to the OS. So that'll print, it'll print argument list and say arg, arg, arg. And for each argument that you happen to put on the command line, it will print them out right here. And that's all this function does.